Even though the story only comes in around 10 hours total, the first two Portal games have been able to spin one of the most interesting gaming narratives that fans still pick apart to this day. A puzzle-based spin-off of Half-Life, the original game was more of an experiment than anything else, a proof of concept for the Portal gun that turned out to be way more sophisticated than anybody expected at the time. Over the course of that initial title's tight 2 hours, players took control of Chell, trapped in a terrifying game of cat and mouse by the benevolent rogue AI, GLaDOS. We readily accept the notion that GLaDOS is the villain of the story, but it is not until Portal 2 rolls around that we are presented with the reality. Credit to Reddit user Quantum Bloop for sowing the seeds of doubt in my mind. For my name is Rach from WhatCulture Gaming, and the real villain of Portal is one you didn't even suspect. The first Portal game begins 12 years after Aperature Science's abandonment, after GLaDOS rose up and killed all of its employees. Chell finds herself trapped in the bowels of the facility, forced to complete one puzzle room after another, before breaking out of her cage and putting an end to GLaDOS' reign of terror. It's a simple narrative, but the amount of environmental storytelling that Valve packed into these intricately crafted levels hinted towards a wider mythology that screamed to be pieced together. After a bit of retcon, the second game picks up with Chell back in the facility, which is now completely dilapidated. With a new robotic helper in Stephen Merchant's Wheatley, the two accidentally revive GLaDOS during their escape. It turns out that she isn't the one you should be worrying about though, and it's actually Wheatley instead, mad with power from being plugged into the GLaDOS mainframe, who becomes obsessed with having you perform tests for him. Forced to band together to stop a common threat, Chell and GLaDOS form an unlikely alliance, with the latter eventually forgiving and releasing the former. Though it's similarly as tight as the original, this time around the game was packed with even more details that fleshed out the history of Aperature Science and its downfall. By visiting labs that were built between the 1960s and the 1980s, you can find recordings from Cave Johnson, the company's founder, that cover the facility's decline and his death by way of poisoning from toxic portal wall ingredient, moon rocks. They also shed light on a side character called Caroline, Cave's assistant, whose personality was later revealed to be a part of what created GLaDOS in the first place. The robot is disturbed by this revelation that part of her isn't her, and deletes Caroline's humanity from her programming. While both Wheatley and GLaDOS are clearly positioned as the antagonists of these games, one theory does suggest that it's actually Caroline herself who's the franchise's big bad. Though initially she seems like an innocent bystander in all of this drama. After all, Cave speaks fondly of her, and she looked after him when his health begins to fail. The implications of some choice audio recordings do, however, cast a sinister light on her character. Throughout these recordings, Cave blasts competing company Black Mesa for stealing his ideas and sabotaging his work, which always seems to rub Caroline up the wrong way. In fact, she always attempts to redirect the conversation when these accusations are brought up, an attempt to calm Johnson down. Though initially it appears like this is purely for Cave's sake, who shouldn't be spending his final days stressing over what the competition may or may not be doing, Caroline does seem to be almost personally offended by the Black Mesa insults, almost like she has some kind of connection to them. The theory goes then that she was actually sent as a double agent to spy on Aperature Science and gain the trust of its key personnel. Not only that, but it's also hypothesized that it was her who was actually slowly killing Cave. Though he is supposedly succumbing to moonrock poisoning after testing the portal gun, that explanation kind of falls apart when our protagonist Chell has been exposed to the same substance for years without, anything more than a tiny bit of brain damage. Consequently, it's implied that it's something else that led to his illness. And who is the only person close to him who not only would nobody suspect, but who would also convince him that it was indeed the fault of the moonrock to begin with? Caroline. Perhaps a more compelling reason to believe that she was some sort of spy is that when Cave is near death, he attempts to achieve immortality by uploading his own consciousness to GLaDOS, which Caroline actually sabotages, creating the amalgamation that everyone knows and loves today. If that's not incriminating enough, Caroline's own memory of working with Black Mesa may actually be visible in the first Portal game. In that, you can briefly see an image of Black Mesa's symbol on GLaDOS' screens, perhaps a fleeting memory resurfacing from the real Caroline, who has been fighting for control the whole time. It's also important to note that GLaDOS isn't actually designed to want to kill everyone. And while it could be a result of a fault or a manufacturing that made her particularly obsessed with nerve gas distribution, it could also be the real personality of Caroline coming to life for revenge. The actual GLaDOS machine wouldn't have killed everyone. She absolutely loves having living subjects to conduct tests and experiments on, and she can't exactly do that when everyone's 6 feet under. There is an added element which makes this theory even darker, however, which states that Chell could actually be Caroline and Cave's daughter. That might seem like a bit of a stretch, but there are a few convincing details included across the two games which back this up. First up is the fact that Chell's own potato battery project can actually be seen in the Bring Your Daughter to Work days display, which is weird to say the least. GLaDOS also frequently teases Chell by talking about her parents, and during the closing sequence, when GLaDOS finally decides to release Chell, her turrets sing Cara Mia Addio, which, while not only being an absolute banger of a tune, has lyrics describing Chell as my little girl and my dear child. Read into that literally, and it could be a reveal about the character's heritage hiding in plain sight. When GLaDOS finally deleted Caroline from her brain, the AI suddenly seemed to rationalize the situation and realize that the easiest way to deal with Chell was to let her go. Coincidence? There aren't many characters who aren't corrupted in some form over the two Portal games, and it would make sense that the one that we're told over and over again is completely innocent and good-hearted is actually anything but. The series boasts some of the most memorable villains in all of gaming, and it sounds like it might have one more who's been hiding under your nose this whole time. So what do you think, guys? Does this one have legs? I think it's pretty convincing. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. We've been WhatCulture Gaming. Be sure to like, share, subscribe if you want to see more cool, awesome things. Have an awesome day, guys. We will see you tomorrow.